Hey, what is up, guys? It is Rapmark here. So, doing my Matrix Resurrections review. Woo! All right, so this is the last film I believe I saw in 2021. I know it's February in 2022 now, but you know what? That's just the way it kind of turned out to be. Anyway, um, so what did I think of this film? Um, I wanted it to be better. It's literally like with the big sad face emoji. Like, oh man. This movie had an interesting premise. It did have some interesting ideas, and I can get that it was very metaphorical. Um, but man, the implementation of some of these were of the certain metaphors were bad. The writing was awful. The writing was super bad. There were some decisions that they made where I'm just like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Like this makes no. So if you are familiar with the original trequel, tr- threequel, uh, trilogy, there we go. Then you like. So I loved the first. I loved most some like there are parts about the second that I loved and some that I didn't like so much, and then the third I was just kind of like, nah. But yeah, if you know those three movies, then you'll know that it's all about good action. It's also about lots of guns, bullet time, as they'll call it in this movie. In this one, there's never a point where Neo actually holds a gun. And why? Like, what? Why does that need to be a thing? And of course, there will always be people who are just like, you just didn't get it. And it's just like, no, I get it, but here's the thing. This is a franchise that has been inactive for about 20 years. Yeah. Um, and you're trying to reboot it, and if you're going to try to reboot it, you have to do certain things, and not having him hold a gun the whole thing when there are guns literally everywhere in this movie is it's not one of them. I mean, I not too long ago I did my Spider-Man review, and that was another one where it's just like you're reactivating old franchise, the James Garfield franchise and Tobey Maguire franchise, ones that have been dead for a while. And I mean, if you're going to do that, you have to hit certain marks. I love the fact that it called on the nostalgia and it referenced certain things, because they did it in an entertaining way that wasn't weird. It actually worked. In this movie, it did not work at all. Neo just felt horribly overpowered or underpowered, I should say. I apologize. Um, the fight scenes, uh, they looked bad. Like I can't say they were bad because maybe the choreographer like actually did justice by the fights, and maybe it was just the person behind the camera who just got the wrong angles for what they were trying to pull, or so I don't know. But yeah, the a lot of the fight scenes just looked bad. Like there, I don't want to get into certain specifics like until we go into spoilers, but uh it was just awkward. And again, all the nostalgia that they're trying to bring, they reference the first movies a lot, especially the very first one, and but they do it super weird because there's literally the first movie playing in the background. It's just like you're watching a movie within a movie, and then it has to explain to you why this senior seeing references that scene in this movie. It's just like, no, please stop. It's it's super awkward. It's poor writing. It assumes that the audience is incredibly stupid, and yeah, I didn't like it. Um, I mean, just for and it deals with the whole concept of people stuck in their own little matrices of social media, like a distraction, something you want but can't have, and that's the whole thing. Like I like the premise of that, and it made a lot of sense. And I just think it was very horribly implemented. Um, let's see the villain. I love Neil Patrick Harris. I love everything he does. In this movie, it just seemed like a weird clash. I'm not sure because he's a goofy guy. That's who he is. He can be dramatic, he can be evil, and he can play a range of things, but he's generally somewhat goofy about it. And in this one, it was just like, I'm not sure if the analyst is meant to be a funny character. Because yeah, it is. He comes off way more goofy, um, and while he does toy with some good ideas, and I do think there are like I don't want to get into spoilers, but yeah, that I mean there is a conversation where he has where he like does elaborate a lot on the psychology of humanity essentially, and it's interesting. I think that the ideas that they're playing with are interesting, just horribly implemented. And then different power levels where it's just like there are points where he seems like he is almost all powerful, and then points where it's just like he can't do crap. You know. So yeah, it was. I wasn't the biggest fan of his character, and it's not that I don't think he did a bad job with what he was given. I just think the writing again was poor, and what they were intending for this character did not come out. And you another thing is you don't really feel any tension in this movie. Like everyone is covered with plot armor, not just the obviously the main characters, but everyone just seems to have some sort of weird plot armoring, like bullet time essentially. Like in the first three movies, I mean there was some bad CGI. Don't get me wrong, there was some really shitty CGI in those movies, but there was also some good. Like in the first one, like it was revolutionary stuff. Like that was, and it looked good for its time. But in this one, like the bullet time, it just seemed weird. It just felt like agents were terrible. They have instead of yeah, it just seemed wonky, and it made like agents and other people, the machines essentially, and the programs tied to that faction, just look like they can't hit anything. Which, again, how are you going to do this? And just how utterly meta this movie is, especially in the first. I mean, they're talking about again how you know we got to do this, we got to do this game because otherwise the studio is gonna do it with or without us. So this has got to happen, and it's just so much self-referential humor. And I really wonder who is to blame for actually making this because, good God, it it was a huge letdown. Let's see the cast. So obviously Keanu Reeves, and then of course Carrie Ann Moss is also in here. Don't want to break down too much about her character, but yeah, she is involved in here. They are both main characters. And aside from that, and like Bugs, like there are some characters where it's just like, okay, I see that. But for the most part, I didn't remember any of these characters. I didn't know who they were. I remembered the Machiavellian or whatever he was called. Let's see if I can find that. The Mer. God, I don't even know if I can pronounce this correctly. The Merovingian, also known as the Frenchman. We'll call him the Frenchman. There we go. Yeah, I he makes a really awkward and bad cameo in this, and it it was oh that scene. It's nostalgia done bad is essentially what it is, and it feels soulless. And people can make the argument, and they are correct on a lot of degrees, that Marvel films do the same thing. Very formulaic, very to the point of soulless, but they do it in a way where I'm entertained as I watched. Like I can just lean back and just digest what's being thrown at my eyes. Whereas this one, it's just like you're trying to make a point and you don't have the writing to back it up, is essentially what it was. I didn't care about many of the side characters again. And yeah, so as much as I wanted to love this movie, I just don't feel it had the good writing behind it to make me want to love it. So, I want to go into spoilers, so I'm going to go into the final verdict here. God, I'm going to give this a 5. Like this wasn't a terrible movie. I mean, in my opinion, if I did half points, I'd be like 4.5 because it's in that between below average and average. But there were a lot of concepts that I did love, and as offensive as some as the and terribly implemented as some of the nostalgia was in this, I did like the ideas, and I did like some of the action sequences. So yeah, it's a pretty meh movie in my opinion. I wouldn't recommend seeing it in theaters, maybe in streaming, but I mean you can skip this one. Just pretend it didn't exist, and the three were the only ones that do, or two if you hate Revolutions, because I don't care for it very much. Um, but yeah, I think that covers this for the non-spoiler review. So I'll be back with spoilers right after this. So see you then, guys. Hey guys, it is a Rapmark here. So doing some spoilers for the Resurrections. Um, so the Matrix is back. We're in a different iteration of it. Um, Neo is stuck in it, and you essentially find out that he is kind of trapped there, but like his memories have been like suppressed. He's apparently been resurrected, which you hear from the analyst. him and Trinity. And yeah, so the first act of this whole movie is essentially just a bunch of self-referential humor, um, where they're just making. He's a game developer, and they're making a new game, and it's just like, we should make it mindless. We should. Did they mention microtransactions in there? I don't know. Live service, I know, is mentioned in there at some point. Like a bunch of just self-referential, and then he talks to his boss. It's just like they're gonna make this game with or without us, so we might as well just do it. And yeah, it's the first act. Good God! And then, so in the real world, they find out where he is because he is essentially did this little modal thing of self looping code using old code from the Matrix. And that was essentially how he was able to get his word out. He realizes that he's not happy where he is, that this is not real. He's seeing a therapist because apparently they're casting that he's suicidal, um, because he can't distinguish between reality and fantasy. And the first Matrix movie, or the trilogies, I guess, but they focus mostly on the first one, um, is a video game. And really interesting, but good God, they metasized it so much. It was awkward. It was awkward, like too on the nose at some points, and they really, really hemmed it home. And I probably should have said this before, but this is a long movie, like, and you could feel how long it was. This is a 2.5 hour movie, I think. Let me see. This is oh my God, yeah, almost 2.5 hour. Wait, so hour 48 minutes. Wow. So yeah, this is the closest of the three movies that I saw where were 2.5 hours. That really felt like 2.5 hours because, good God, they overplayed certain stuff again, like the meta in the first act, and and a few other things. Like they really overplayed, I think, like I not IO itself, ow, but like a lot of oh good God, I lost my train of thought. Anyway, so let's move on. Um, so the analyst plays as his therapist at first. So you find out him, and essentially what he is a program that was created in the aftermath of the machine war after Neo ended it. And you find out later that a bunch of programs were purged. So essentially what happened was there were robots who were willing to help out humanity. Um, and then those that kind of wanted things to just keep going the way they were. And which was fine, except for with a vast majority of humans from the fields, like being like, no, I don't want to be in this matrix. They were having power shortages, and it focuses again, like war creates a lot of noise and stuff like that. And so yeah, what causes war? Shortages, and they ran low on power. So there was a war, and which I thought was cool. I wish they played on it more, but there was literally like just only a 5-second clip of what this war looked like, which I felt was sad because I thought that was interesting. Like that was something I wish they had played up instead of again like all the fucking meta references. Like they literally have a scene where he's talking with a recast Morpheus, um, which from what I've read, he wasn't even asked to reprise his role, and I think that was a mistake. Not to say that the person who did it was the Candyman actor who did a bad job, especially with what he was given. He did add somewhat a uniqueness spin to it, but it didn't feel like Morpheus. And then you go into the backstory where he's dead, and whatever. It Yeah, it just felt weird. But yeah, he's talking to Morpheus and they're trying to get him out of the Matrix. He finally accepts taking the red pill and literally and also they have to replug him in because he's drugged up on the stuff they've given him to sort of make him stay in the Matrix. But anyway, anytime when he's like referencing him at first or talks with this new Morpheus, they're literally showing scenes in the background of like the first movie and like explaining it, and it's just like, okay, yeah, that first act was just meta as hell, and it was just awkward and way overplayed. Um, then you go, and then it essentially turns into as they pull him out, he sees Trinity's body also in a tank, and he's just like, "We should go get her." And the crew is just like, "Well, we don't know how that's going to be possible." And then he's just like, "Okay, let's go do this." So they go do it, and they meet a lot of stuff like what the heck is her name? Jada Pinkett Smith. Her character was some really, I don't know, like I've seen worse prosthetics, but I mean, God, it was not great. Like her age, the way they tried to age her up, it didn't look effective. It looked a little hokey, especially with the scar. I just I wasn't impressed with it. But anyway, like she locks him up. She doesn't want any trouble with the machines. Um, and then the crew breaks them out. I don't know any, besides Bugs, I don't know any of the crew's names. And yeah, so they go and they make it seem like they have to do this elaborate plan to get to where her body is because it's like this tower that is guarded by like tens of thousands of sentinels, which the sentinels, are the human killers. They are there to hunt down and kill any humans. I mean, obviously, since the war, I guess they take on more of a guard duty or like just making sure that any ships that exit the city of Io, you know, stay out of the main machine cities. But yeah, and but when it's done, it's just like, wow, that didn't seem very hard at all. And there felt like there was no tension again. Like nobody dies in this movie. FYI, nobody dies in this movie. I mean, yeah, you kind of have at the end a bunch of programs. So essentially, they don't have like they have agents, but not like official agents. They essentially a large part of this matrix is populated by AI programs that just have their own personalities and they've married humans, whatever, just to sort of give them the illusion that this is real. Um, and then they do horde mode essentially, where essentially the suits, because apparently that's how the analyst describes his bosses. they he or they, or I don't know, they take control, and essentially these programs do whatever. And toward the end, there's a scene where Neo is attempting to get Trinity out of the Matrix, and I'm really glad that it was played very short, as opposed to Neo's, because it's just like when dealing with things that are real and not real, there's some things that do it right and are believable and entertaining. Like you can suspend that disbelief. This was not one of those movies, sadly for me. Um, and yeah, hers only lasted like a few seconds, and then she yells out Neo, and then there's this epic fight, and they bring back Agent Smith, but it's recast again. Um, and no one can touch Hugo Weaving's Agent Smith. Like it just didn't feel right. I'm not gonna say it was the actor's fault. I'm gonna blame writing and just the fact that Hugo Weaving's Agent Smith was such an iconic character. Like trying to recast it is, ugh, just bad. Bad news bears. But I do like some of the arguments the analyst makes, like in terms of keeping people there. Like Trinity and Neo have to be like in close proximity, and then while they're in the Matrix, they have to be close but never together. Because if they're together, then it creates a whole bunch of anomalies within the Matrix that cause it to be rebooted. Whereas if they are in close proximity, even within the Matrix, but never together, then it sort of feeds and increases, like how he says, increases power productivity so that they can actually produce more power. And that's why the analyst is, I guess, so high up in terms of robot hierarchy, which, I mean, I really hope they don't make a sequel to this movie. But if they actually, like, continue to build upon the universe, because the universe is filled with really interesting ideas, I'd like them to build upon that more, like the robot hierarchy, who does what's going on, stuff like that. But that's here or there. But yeah, he talks about how, yeah, essentially people don't want facts. They want to be controlled. They want to be controlled, but they want to be given the illusion of hope, which again is very interesting philosophically because look at our world right now. Uh, it's so again, I thought there were interesting concepts, some interesting scenes within this movie, but for the most part, it literally felt like an hour and a half of this movie was just a drag and horribly implemented. Uh, and toward the end, there's like this chase scene. Like one of the side characters almost dies, but it's just like at this point, you're already out of this movie. Like there's no tension, no one dies. Yeah, absolutely no one dies, and it's utterly ridiculous because again, you go with the first one, you had operators die, you had people with, I don't know what they're called in the first movie. In this movie, they call them red pillars, but yeah, you have red pillars who die. You know, both within and outside of the matrix as well as within the matrix, and it gives you a sense of tension. People are expendable, people can die, people that you actually care about, and you got none of that with this movie, and it was super sad. And finally, they're the last ones to leave this universe or leave the matrix. They get trapped. They redo the helicopter scene from the first one, which I did kind of enjoy. I thought it looked really interesting, but literally all Neo does is like acts as a bullet shield. Like for most of it, he's forgotten how to fly, like everything. And then after the helicopter's taken out and they jump off, and you think that's going to be his moment, and suddenly they start flying. It's just like, I'm not doing this, or you. And yeah, Trinity is the one who I guess now becomes the one, or maybe they're both the. I don't even know. uh, but yeah, the whole thing was to build her up, and then off screen he learns how to fly, and then you have this last final scene of them talking to the analyst and him just being a dick and her just beating the shit out of him. I mean, apparently they're still letting him live because he knows humans so well and he knows those two so well. So and then they fly off. They both of them fly off, and they're going to remake the Matrix however they see fit or something. I don't know. Yeah, this movie, I see what it was trying to do. It just horribly executed it, and I was not a fan of it. It made me sad, and again, if they revisit this universe, I wouldn't mind, but I think they need to just totally scrap all of these characters. They need to start fresh again, because again, it has an interesting premise. It has some interesting concepts about humanity, about imprisonment, about hope, and then also about, relationships between humans and machines with themselves, with the whole war. But yeah, this one just, it was essentially a love story that was a rough, loose revamp of or remix of the first Matrix movie, and just done way worse. So that was mine. Again, 5 of 10. There were a lot of things I did not like about it, but there were some things that I did enjoy about it, and that's why it gets an average score. Uh, I kind of feel like I may be generous with it, but again, I have to give credit where credit is due. I do think the actors did the best with what they were given. I do like the concepts behind the universe. I liked some of the action scenes. Oh my God, there's one more I have to cover. The exiled one. So yeah, I may have covered that one, but yeah, like the Frenchman and a bunch of old programs from the second movie, I believe. Make a comeback, and it's supposed to be funny and referential, and it just turned awkward and cringy. And at the end, he makes a joke like he's a hobo. He's pissed that he's lost everything. So, and at the end, he makes a joke that he's going to be back in a sequel, and I'm just like, please no. Like, I would love them to keep doing stuff with this universe, just not with these characters, because, ugh, this movie just ruined these characters for me, essentially. But yeah, that's why I'm giving this movie why I'm giving it, and that's what I thought of it. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Uh, I cannot recommend this movie in any way, but I mean, if you really want to and you really are a completionist when it comes to franchises, go ahead. Just go into it with really low expectations, and that way you're not going to be massively disappointed. So, anyway, y'all have a good one, and I'll catch you next time. See ya.